graduation address. And when we met to talk about that, the decision was made very quickly and easily that all 4 of them are giving the address tonight. So I'm going to invite them up, and they're going to have something to share with you.
I can still remember my first day of pre-K3 at NCA. I was so excited to start school, and since Miss Moore loved butterflies and her class had a butterfly theme, I was wearing a butterfly dress, butterfly shoes, and I had butterflies in my hair. This was all thanks to my Nana, who loves to dress me appropriately for every season, including tonight. I walked into her classroom, dropped my book bag, and ran to give Miss Moore a big hug. I looked around at all the butterflies and was so excited to start my first day of school. In pre-K4, I remember Mrs. Hartley took us on a trip around the world. We made our own paper suitcases and passports. We would board the imaginary airplane, she would give us snacks and drinks, and when we arrived at our location, she would stamp our passports for every place we went to. I had so much fun that year. In kindergarten, we were the first class to hatch chicks with Mrs. Naples. It was so fun to watch them hatch and take them home for the weekend. Mrs. Naples is such an amazing teacher. She always has a heart of worship and would show us God's love every day from the moment we walked in her door. I continue to learn so much about living for Christ from her. I loved being in first grade because I had the privilege of having my mom for a teacher. I loved being able to call her Mommy instead of Mrs. Flom. The big thing I learned from first grade was fully rely on God, frog. If you've ever been in my mom's classroom, you've seen the tons and tons of frogs she has. Mom, you've taught me so much about how to live biblically, and I see you demonstrate it every day. I love you so, so much. In second grade, I remember our Flat Stanley projects. It was so fun going around and taking pictures with him and creating the poster. My favorite things about third grade were Box City and the Wax Museum. I remember being Sacagawea for the Wax Museum, and I had a tent as a prop behind me. It was the first time I had to write and share a speech. Mrs. Arthur was one of my favorite teachers. She was always very encouraging and helped us when we needed it. She always demonstrated God's love for us. Fourth grade was full of amazing things, but my favorite one was St. Augustine. We toured the city and learned about Florida history. It was our first overnight field trip. It was also the year I met Catherine, who is now one of my best friends. I remember playing games and hanging out in her hotel room with her sister Victoria. When we were at school, I always loved when Mrs. Cully would read us stories and use many different voices. Mrs. Cully loved to teach us God's Word. We had so much fun performing Sir Oliver and learning about the 10 Commandments, and I still remember almost all the songs. My favorite part about 5th grade was going to Arcadia to look for fossils. I remember always teasing Miss Sylvester about her then boyfriend, now husband, Brendan. We also learned some really fun games that we still play now. 6th grade was a whole new experience from elementary school. We had to get used to using lockers and switching classes. My favorite memory from 6th grade was going to Busch Gardens in Mosey. I loved going on the ropes course at Mosey, and I loved spending time with my dad at Busch Gardens. I loved getting to know all the teachers that year. In 7th grade, we had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. I grew closer with my class on that trip and made amazing memories. I also loved going on the 7th and 8th grade retreat for the first time. This was also the year that Keyshawn joined our class. I learned so much from all the middle school teachers about living for God that year. Now, this year was very different from all the others. We moved buildings and lost over 3/4 of our class, leaving only 3 of us until Medell joined us. We also combined classes with 7th grade, which was very interesting at times. My favorite memory from this year was definitely the mission trip to Costa Rica. It was the first time I had the opportunity to leave the U.S. and go to another country to serve God. I learned so much from the mission trip about serving the Lord and living for God. I also loved my final middle school retreat. It was fun to be able to bond with the 6th and 7th graders while also being a leader. We had a similar opportunity during Spirit Week. There are also many more memories that I'll never forget, like videoing Keyshawn singing Hamilton in D.C., helping Medell with her Spanish, and rooming with Catherine in our termite-infested room on the mission trip. The list can go on and on. I'm definitely going to miss making memories at NCA as I have for the past 10 years of my life. I'm grateful for the time I have had here and for every teacher who has impacted my life.